is Glovers. I am a 3D Zelda speedrunner, primarily Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, and Breath of the Wild. And today I'll be showcasing Twilight Princess All Fused Shadows. It's not a full game category. It's a bit of an interesting one, and I'll get into the nitty-gritty on why in a little bit. But to give you a brief overview of what the category is, it is if you're familiar with Twilight Princess, then you know that there are three fused shadows. And those three fused shadows are the dungeon rewards of the first, second, third dungeons. In terms of flow of the game, it feels like it is the halfway point of the game, though really I would argue it's more like the 1/3 of the way through point of the game casually. That's how it feels to the average player. All Fused Shadows, of course, seeks to get those three fused shadows and from a fresh file, and that's all. So it ends up being not a full game run at all, though full game runs are very interesting. They're just kind of long. But without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to count us down, and we will start in 3, 2, 1, go. So All Fused Shadows is going to start out just like basically every Twilight Princess run does. Not literally every, but most, where we're going to do what is called gate clip and then immediately do what is called back in time. So we're going to grab this rock over here. Everybody say hello to Dwayne Johnson. That is the name of the rock in two senses of that statement. And Dwayne here is going to help us out a little bit. We want to get through this gate here. And it's a little bit of a sequence break too, but actually we just kind of want to void because we want to do back in time. So for marathon runs, we do what is called safe bit. So that's what I've done here. And safe bit is bit meaning back in time, of course, is successively pressing buttons on the same frame because back in time is a frame perfect trick to ensure that we get back in time. This time buffering the map pull with dropping from the bridge there. So then if we just, after we get back in time, I did get back in time just puts us onto the title screen with active control of Link. If we then save that file, it puts us in South Farron here, where we now have the Orden Sword, the Hylian Shield, and the Hero's Clothes. We do also have a couple of extra things that are more, they're actually useful, but not as noticeable offhand, like the Eponetane flag, for instance, whatever that means. We'll get into that in a little while. This also sets the state of a few different NPCs, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the actual hero's clothes, sword, and shield that I have are not actual items, interestingly enough. So the back in time file forces the sword, shield, and hero's clothes onto Link without actually having the items themselves. So if I were to pause right now, I would have none of those items, which we'll see. Actually, I'm going to pause to save in about 5 minutes. That said, it doesn't make them less effective. They effectively are the item. They're just not within our inventory. So it would invalidate anything for the sake of, say, a 100% run, but this is not 100%. This is all fused shadows. So we do not really care. This sequence that we're going through here, after doing that bit save, we just need to progress the state of Orden, which means that we need to go and save Talo. Then we will herd the goats, and we will get our iron boots and do what is very normal for Twilight Princess runs. Very normal to the point that we will sometimes use the phrase Gategoat's Bow, as it's the beginning of the run up until Bow, being Mayor Bow, the gatekeeper of the Iron Boots, is a heavy RNG point. All Fused Shadows starts out identical to nearly every Twilight Princess run that you'll see out there. Not exactly identical, but near identical. So we're going to go up here and save Talo from this cage that he's got himself stuck in. All Fused Shadows is a fun category in that it is among what are known as either race categories or prep categories, practice categories, if you will. Though they have their own leaderboards, they are what are considered to be either the purpose of literally racing the category because we don't have 3 hours, or to just practice. It is the original intent of All Fused Shadows was a lead up category that was splitting up what ends up being all dungeons, which is my personal favorite category. It's a very fun run. So All Fused Shadows is effectively a bit-sized piece of what all dungeons is, and based on the statement that I just gave about all dungeons being my favorite category, it's actually my favorite category of any game that I play. Is all dungeons and Twilight Princess. That is my favorite speedrun. All Fused Shadows being a subset of that is very, very fun, in my opinion. Herding the Goats here, we're playing on German. German is optimal for most full game runs, so I just have a habit of playing on German, though actually Japanese is fastest for All Fused Shadows. We herd the goats, and then now, like I mentioned before, we're off to Bo. Bo is one of the gatekeepers of the early game. He is the RNG gatekeeper of the early game. Bo is a sumo wrestling in basically what can be called rock paper scissors. So we will have 2 phases of rock paper scissors, and they have their own different options that I can do. I can either slap, I can push, or I slap, shove, or dodge, right? So in no case will I actually dodge because it's not proper rock, paper, scissors. There are statistics for what is correct. In phase 1, slapping is the statistically most optimal option, and in phase 2, pushing or shoving is. Now that said, that is statistically. If you slapping is the only way you can actually one-cycle Bo, so most runners will just slap until they feel like it's time to start shoving. They will always start out with a slap. Now the one cycle, which I just got there, is not RNG after you actually have hold of Bo. It does depend on the mash speed of the runner. You have to mash at 12 inputs per second or higher, getting good RNG there, knocking them off right away. Very nicely done. So pretty good RNG on Bo there, and we're going to get the iron boots here. And so the next thing that we're going to do, this is actually going to be a little bit different from how most runs work for Twilight Princess. Normally we would go straight to the sewers and try to get through that as possible to go to who is the second gatekeeper of the early game, Hugo, which we will see in a little bit. In All Fused Shadows, we want a lot of money. We want 220 rupees throughout the entire run. So one thing that we do want is there is a purple rupee here that normally you would get using a cucko. We can get it by lining up a semi-specific angle, side hopping, and slashing midair to grab that purple rupee, which I did just there. Now we will continue and we will go through the sewer sequence, which is the first bit of wolf movement that we will see, and one of my more favorite parts of most runs, just because of the heavy influence that minor movement tech has on the sewers segment. There are multiple segments like that where they end up, and they are my personal favorites, where the minor movement or just minor tech in general are so prevalent, and those tend to be my more favorite segments. That is why I like sewers so much, because we have so many minor things that are in the segment. It's just riddled with them. So the first one here, we're going to go for a thing called box break, where we time and have a specific angle to get a combo trying to break that box. It saves 3 frames, so we don't really need to worry about if we get it or not. It's a very minor thing, but it does save us having to break that box there, and saves 3 frames total. Now, a lot of the other things that we have here are, say, grabbing that chain as early as possible, grabbing it with a good angle so that when I go into the load zone, I don't need to turn as much. Minor things like that are just what makes up these segments and are why I love these parts of the run so much. But for the most part, to the casual viewer, what we're doing is we're just kind of going through the sewers. We're grabbing some chains, raising water levels, going across spiky death traps, because that's what we have in sewers. That's how the sewer system works. Yep. If you haven't been in a sewer before, you can't prove me wrong. Here's another minor one. As I do a dash, I go into C up to cancel that dash animation, which then gives me my dash right back. That's called a dash cancel. Lowering that water level, because that spiky death trap that we find in every sewer in the world is now behind us. So now we need to go through the nicely carved out hole that makes this sewer really seem more like a prison. It really seems more like a prison than a sewer. Spiky death traps also are not present in sewers. That's how we know it's a sewer, is because it has that death trap. So we have some minor tech here, like I mentioned before. So for example, there is a 1-frame jump. I did not get it there, where you can skip along with Midna as she jumps over to the spot to trigger the Midna jumps. If you get an A press on the first frame of some but not all Midna jump spots, then you jump straight across with her. So the one that I just did is not possible. This one here is another one that's possible. Let's see if I get it. I do get it that time. And you can hear the jump happen early. There's another 1-framer here that skips some text. Let's see if I get it. Yep. So on the frame after you skip that cutscene, if you input a jump attack, you do not get a text trigger from Midna. These are the minor tech that I was talking about. And again, these things are just kind of throughout Twilight Princess. It's one of the reasons that I really like the game. They're also throughout the other Zelda games that I enjoy. Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time have all of these minor things that are just so cool. And it's kind of why I prefer the ones that I prefer. But moving on here, we're finishing up the sewer segment, going to enter Zelda's tower here. So after we enter Zelda's tower, we go through a cutscene that luckily is skippable. Almost every cutscene in Twilight Princess is skippable, luckily. There are a few that aren't, and we'll see a few throughout this run, only one major one. The next thing that we're going to do here is, I mentioned before that Sword and Shield skip, or I think I might have said Hugo. So Sword and Shield skip is the biggest gatekeeper of people learning the run, of getting a run going, of, well, a lot of things. So this Bulblin here, we call him Hugo. He is our favorite little friend, and he loves to attack. He loves to not do what we want him to, And basically what we want to do is we want to take Hugo here, and we're going to use him to play a game of leapfrog and jump over a trigger that would prevent us from entering Farron and jump into the trigger to enter Farron. So we're going to line up right here, trying to go around Hugo here, lining him up here, and then we back hop. And okay, that is one way to fail it. The general idea is that when Hugo gives you a good attack, quote unquote, that you would back hop and then jump attack to hit Hugo, and then jump attack a second time to play leapfrog with Hugo. Unfortunately, they're not exactly holding back properly to get a back hop. Don't get it there. So, I mean, this is a hard trick. This is what gatekeeps a lot of people from running this game. It is something that can be a demotivator for people that do run the game actively on some days where they just can't seem to get the trick. It's not an easy trick by any means, and it can be very tilting to fail for run after run after run, and that is unfortunately just more common for newer runners because they aren't as accustomed to the trick as someone who's a more experienced runner like myself. Though I do still fail it like that, where I'm very close to the trigger. That was very slightly late. That was a good angle, but the timing on the second jump attack was just a little bit late, so I didn't quite get the height that I needed. If the angle were slightly more towards the center, then it would have been in, or if I had attacked earlier, it would have been in. But again, hard trick. These sorts of things happen. You know, everyone has their meltdowns every so often. There's no skin off my back for that. And it means that we get the extra rupees for the 220 rupees that I need. We're already at 60. So again, to iterate, but in a bit more detail, what we do here, we want to line up on a specific spot here. There's a black line on the ground that I'm looking at specifically. I want to push Hugo to be just past that and not so far to the left like he was there, kind of in between that black line and the white splotch that he's on right now. That looks good, and into the Farron Twilight I am. There we go. So, a little bit of difficulty, but again, hard trick. Completely understandable for the purpose of doing the run that I did, where it is purely meant like a marathon, you know, just go ahead and do it. While I would hope to get it faster than a third try, it sometimes just isn't in the cards. Moving on, though, we are now in the Farron Twilight. So in the Farron Twilight, we're going to do a few things. So the most common category for people to run is, of course, any percent. Any percent does not optimally beat the Farron Twilight. So a lot of people who watch Twilight Princess, or even a lot of runners of Twilight Princess, aren't super familiar on how to beat Farron Twilight optimally. Now, for myself, actually, the opposite is true. I basically exclusively run categories that do beat Farron Twilight. So it's very normal for me to go ahead and beat Farron Twilight, but that's what we'll be doing here. So we're going to do trying to do a minor time saver there. Not getting it, but no reason to really go for that. I was just trying to show off where it would not have that text if I had opened the map on the same frame that I clicked the text hit A for the text on the vessel there. So going through the Twilight here, the general idea of what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect the tiers that are not on a straight line path. So for example, that tier, I will come back and grab that one, but I'm going to leave myself a straight line path to the Forest Temple because I'm going to be coming through this path twice. So I'm going to collect these bugs because they're in a house. I don't want to come back in-house. I'm going to collect the one that I left outside. I actually only left it outside because it saves a little bit of time for me to just... dropping. For me to go back for it, and because of how tiers work in the GameCube and Wii versions of the game, where we don't always have the ability to collect the tier, it makes it optimal for us to collect the tier after we exit the house. Now, these bugs, on the other hand, these bugs are exactly in that straight line path, so I'm going to defeat them and let them explode to spawn the tier, but I'm not going to collect the tier because I want those tiers sitting there and collectible for me to come back in a straight line path and just grab them. The same thing is true of these next two bugs here. So I'm going to do a jump attack onto that one and then a Midna charge attack onto this one, which is going to put me straight into a Midna trigger that is then going to give me a nice bit of lag that makes a one-frame jump easier there because of that lag. Talking to Midna a little bit early there. But a fun little strat there. Now here we're going to dash forward a little bit and then slow down as we approach these bugs so that we can defeat all three in one go. Now, doing Midna jumps across here, there is a cycle to this next segment, which has been going this whole time, where there's this swinging branch. Now, this branch is going to come back towards me, but I'm very familiar with the cycles. I know that by being on that far side, it will not hit me. These bugs burrowed, they are also on that straight line path that I was mentioning before. I'm just going to leave them and defeat them later because it takes longer for me to get them out of the ground, and they won't be in the ground anymore later. Now I'm going to do a trick called Early Master Sword, biting the Shadow Beast there so that I get a quick reset on its animation, using that jump or the swing animation to do a trick called a super jump out of bounds, and then jumping down to the Sacred Grove, entering the Sacred Grove. We are now on our way to get the Master Sword very, very early. Now here are our woos. So uwu, uwu, uwu. Is it awu? It's awu, I'm being told. Uwu, owo, uwu. So the Sacred Grove is a very normal and it's just kind of a run along a path, and then you bite Skull Kid. So it's like a great spot to take a break from commentary on explaining stuff and maybe have donations read or have just some more casual conversation than explaining something outright. Like, is not exactly the easiest thing to do with just myself. There is no commentator here during this submission. There is a bit of cool tech here, though. So, and that was a bit of a meta conversation. There's a bit of cool tech here, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delay a dash with a good angle such that I get an extra little boost and I land barely not in the water, so that I can not have to climb out of the water. Minor tech, very cool, very fun, and that's what makes the game so cool in my opinion. There are 3 hits to the Skull Kid chase. We are on the 3rd one here. There's another minor little bit of tech that I'm going to do here, where I'm not going to just attack him normally or as early as possible. I'm going to almost run by Skull Kid, B-attack off the edge so that I'm now down below when I regain control. so that I can go past and enter the fight arena faster than if I had to jump down from above. Now, the second part of the Skull Kid chase is the Skull Kid fight, or rather, the second part of Sacred Grove is the Skull Kid fight following the Skull Kid chase. Here, these puppets, they spawn, and basically how it works is Skull Kid is only vulnerable when he's trying to summon more puppets. Defeating only one puppet will enable him to spawn more. So because the game has a frame of hit lag when you actually connect with an enemy, we want to only hit the one. That is what's optimal. There I hit two. Not that big of a deal because it's only a single frame of hit lag. But if I were to say hit all 7 of them, then it's very noticeable what's going on and not fast at all. Getting the third hit in, though, that is the end of the Skull Kid fight. Now we have to do the Master Sword puzzle, but here's where there's a little bit of a difference in this route from most routes, is we still want all those rupees in such a short amount of time. So we're going to actually grab some rupees right here. There's a red rupee that you can dig up here that I'm sure a lot of people did not know about, regardless of how well they know this game. I did not know about that for a very long time. Doing our uwu, owo, and awoos, we're now doing Lidurdaloo, which is the solved solution for this puzzle that I pronounce. The solution is left, down, up, up, right, right, down, 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 left, up, or, if you like to say it out loud like I do, Lidurdaloo. I don't actually know anyone else who likes to pronounce it, but I do call it Lidurdaloo. Just a little bit longer here. It's a very solved puzzle. The solution is always the same. And that is all we need to get the Master Sword. So when we go up here and grab the Master Sword, that is how you get the Master Sword in 26 minutes. So the actual Master Sword isn't granted to the inventory until about now. When Link transforms into a human again is when the game assigns the Master Sword to your inventory for some reason. Or sorry, that's when it assigns the Shadow Crystal. The Master Sword is assigned when Link picks up the sword. The Shadow Crystal is the name given to what is the ability to transform, though a lot of people will know this game as having the Master Sword have the ability to transform locked behind it. They are actually treated as separate items within the game's code. They're just assigned in the same cutscene for some reason. Nintendo decided to do it that way. Finishing up this cutscene, like I mentioned, there is one major cutscene that we cannot skip. It is the Master Sword cutscene. We do have to sit here going through this text as Midna talks about how she doesn't like Zant, and he's a meanie face, and she can suddenly live in the light because of things that haven't happened yet. Yeah, it's not confusing at all. It's kind of like how, in, maybe you don't know, in Ocarina of Time 100% runs, the general prescription is that Sheik is not actually Zelda because you see Sheik after Zelda gets kidnapped, so Sheik was lying. In that same vein, Midna cannot be out in the light, but she was able to in that cutscene. But she is not able to be out in the light because we have not finished the Midna's Desperate Hour sequence. So outside of the Twilight areas, Midna will not be on our back, even as Wolf. Which is a look that most people are not familiar with. You see it in sewers before Midna gets on your back, but not really anywhere else casually, other than some parts where you are Wolf. Some very, very minor parts of the game where you're Wolf. Where in speedruns, we are almost more accustomed to that version of the Wolf. So we're collecting the tears from before, by the way. We're now going back along that path. We're going through this purple mist here that normally the monkey would guide us along. We don't have her here to guide us along, but the lantern actually still functions as it did with her. So we can make our own path and just go straight through, which is very nice. Collecting those tears from before where we left them to burrow, defeating them and then waiting for them to explode gives us time to collect some rupees, which is very nice. Already at 93 out of those 220. Going to defeat these shadow beasts here. And we're going to defeat the final Twilight bugs of the Fair and Twilight, but we are not going to beat the Twilight. And there's a reason for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here and we're going to defeat them, but we are not going to collect their tears because we're going to want to later use the warp that it gives us to South Farron to get, well, to South Farron. We actually want to be in South Farron at that point. But now we're going to do Back in Time again, actually. And this is for a different reason. Unfortunately, missing the trick there. We are going to save our file. We're going to have to retry. But what we're doing here is if you do something called Back in Time Equipped, where you have the correct map associations that allow us to load a file, that will actually load us into the King Bulblin 1 fight, which we'll see here momentarily, which we will actually use that again later, and I'll explain more about how it works then. But in this case, we just want to press start. We'll hear Link screaming on the title screen, and then it's going to load the King Bulblin 1 fight. And what we're going to use this for is we're going to reset the game and skip the cutscene while the game is resetting, and that will give us something called early boss fights. So early boss fights is basically persisting the boss fight flag number, which is registering us as being able to, for the intro boss fights, basically when you enter a boss fight, it sets a flag that if you were to die, you don't have to watch it again, just set you in the fight. Don't worry about watching it. That flag is shared across basically all boss fights. Not all, but most of them. And after we get past these spiders here, unfortunately, the Deku Nut bust without defeating the spider, so I'm going to have to do something called spider skip here, which is RNG, and it does not look like I'm going to get good RNG. These spiders stare at us for a while. Can't go there. Can try here, and it's continuing to go, so I should have stopped there. I didn't, though. Going over. Why did I climb up? Okay, so this is also just my own fault. Climbing there still wasn't correct. Getting knocked all the way down. Just kind of hold there. Even still, that was still risky. Didn't get punished, though. Now I can climb. And now we're past the spider. Spider skip is usually not that punishing, but it is pure RNG, and the spider is very aware of you. Her name is Nancy. We do not like Nancy. Nancy is unkind. It is fast to do that trick if you get good RNG. So that same boss fight association is for some reason referenced on the monkey count in Forest Temple. So now we have 4 monkeys like we saved them, and I'm going to void here intentionally because that clears the other effect of early boss fights, which is the thing that I mentioned earlier where it starts the boss fight automatically, because we don't actually want that. Later, that would actually mess us up. So entering the Ook fight here, this is where we're going to get our boomerang. So Ook is yet another bit of RNG. Ook will bounce at a minimum number 2 times. The average is 2 to 3. And after that, and getting a 3 here, we just knock him down, smack him around with the Master Sword, and one cycle him very easily. This is another cutscene that we can't skip, unfortunately. Ook had a parasite on him, not unlike the Twilight bugs from before. He's not actually that bad of a guy. Look at him. He's embarrassed. And we startled him. He's bright red. But he left behind the boomerang, so we're going to take that. The boomerang's actually possessed by the Fairy of the Winds. Why the Fairy of the Winds is in a boomerang? I don't know. But you know, hey, I like fairies, I like winds, I like boomerangs. So, those are all good things in my mind. And then going to save warp. If you were paying attention, you would have seen by now that I don't actually have an Orden sword or a Hylian shield. I do now have the hero's clothes. Or actually, no, I don't. I get those at completing Fair and Twilight. I am about to have those. They're given to you when you beat Fair and Twilight, which I haven't done yet. A lot simpler of a way to climb this vine is to knock the spiders down first. It's the intended thing to do. We just don't have a slingshot to have done that with in the first place. Now we have the boomerang. So for all fused shadows specifically, this is a unique route thing for this category. We are going to grab the Uku in Forest Temple, who is behind this rock here. There she is. And Uku allows us to warp in and out of dungeons. She's basically an item version of Ocarina of Time's Pharaoh's Wind. We're going to use that immediately because we're going to use that for a glitch later. Well, we're specifically going to use Uku Jr., who is going to be in our inventory when we are not in a dungeon. So we're going to complete the Fair and Twilight now, finally getting the hero's clothes, because that was the most important thing. Almost rolling back into Forest Temple. But first what we're going to do is we're going to do that same trick from before, back in time equipped, but we're going to use that to get to Kakariko. So we're going to save warp here after this midden text, and we're going to head to Kakariko via that same King Bolin 1 fight. Now, back in time equipped is true to its name. It's called Bite for that reason. The equipped part is that we maintain our inventory equipment on the file that we select on the file select menu. So because we just saved this file, and this file does have the correct room ID and map ID, then we can actually load that King Bolin 1 fight while loading the file that I just saved, saving all of our equipment and getting into Kakariko Village early without having to go to the gorge, without even leaving Farron until now, I guess, warping us to Kakariko. So King Bulblin 1 is RNG. It's 8 slashes, relatively normalized, but that can happen. Where if you bonk into one of the Bulblins that's following you, then King Bulblin will get away, and it can be a bit annoying to get to him. Not quite having enough distance to get him, so I step back a little bit, going around because he does stagger a little bit as he jumps over, as do you, and getting him down. Now, this is the interesting part of the fight right here. So, this is a jousting segment normally. So what we can do here is if we do a certain setup and rear opponent, turn around, we're going to charge a spin attack, but we don't necessarily need to hit that because we can also just swing the sword and knock him off in one go around instead of doing a jousting match like is intended. So because we are normally supposed to beat King Bulblin 1 after the Elden Twilight is done, the village is in a weird state. Luckily for us, we can just go into the sanctum here and exit it again, and that will restore Kakariko to the state when you first enter it in Twilight, where we have the Shadow Beasts from before, and we can collect the vessel after defeating the Shadow Beasts. So, going to do that really quickly. Although you can beat them as human. We don't normally beat that as human because we're in Twilight. That isn't a spot that you were supposed to be human. Collecting that vessel as human because it is faster to do that. And then we will go to the edge of the water here. It's faster to roll as human. And then chaining rolls here, if we chain them properly, it is faster to do these, keep these same speed, or it is the same speed, I should say. And then we do need to transform here. So I transform after the load zone. Elden Twilight is another one of those sequences that I was mentioning before, where we have a lot of minor movement tech and just a lot of highlighted movement tech, like accidentally targeting the keys there so I don't get a side hop to clip into the well, but I do get to side hop to the right, which is interesting. Not normally how that goes, but fun nonetheless. And then there is normally a strat there where you get all three in one go. Unfortunately, missing that is another one of the cool strats that you can do in Elden Twilight. As we exit here, we're going to collect that tear from the bug that we defeated before. And we're going to head over to the Malomart bug. This segment is, like I mentioned, one of the ones that I find very fun because it's just a lot of minor movement tech and strats that are just... The small stuff adds up so much in these kinds of runs, and I find that to be the most appealing part, that I would not have it any other way. Twilight Princess is very, very good when it comes to those minor, satisfying things to both see and to pull off. It is peak gameplay, in my opinion. So we're going to... Well, not meaning to attack that wall that much. Bonking that wall there does knock that Twilight the Twilight bug up above down early, so we can immediately attack it. going to grab these rupees. So that's something that I haven't actually mentioned yet is rupee text on anything that is larger than a green rupee. You get a single bit of rupee text for any rupee larger than a green rupee one time any time that the rupee is collected on that instance of that file. So if I were to go back to the title screen and load a new file, I would get it again. That is a little bit different in HD, where it's once per actual file, not just instance of the file. But on SD, that's how that works. And now that I have that yellow rupee text, I no longer need to skip around over rupees. I'm doing a side hop there because if there were a blue rupee, I would want to skip its text. If you collect the rupee while mid-animation, it can't actually lock you into that text, and if you were in the animation for long enough, you don't get that text, which is nice, and it skips the text. So we like being fast in our speedruns. Coming up on another strat here, not in this room, but in the next room actually, is called Bomb House Skip. I will be doing the Wolf variant, which is the faster but harder version of it. It's a trick that I've done for a lot of years, so I'm not unconfident in myself in it, even though it is the harder version, though there is a way to do it with the Gale Boomerang that is really a 1 out of 10 on the difficulty scale, where Wolf Bomb House Skip is maybe a 6. Very simply done there. I take it very safe. And basically what we were doing was that bug that I just defeated, we skipped over its trigger to go to the bomb house, and when we jumped, and that was when we jumped over the gap, and then we approach that same trigger from closer to the bomb house, triggering it and defeating it on its way to the bomb house. The game then thinks that because it is defeated, the bomb house is blown up and gives us all 3 of the tiers that are in the bomb house. Now in here, we're going to do a bit of a damage strat, which gives us, very nicely done, skipping the text, which gives us the bug positioning itself vulnerable next to that load zone, which is very, very nice. And making our way to the Death Mountain Trail segment. This is the last bit of the Elden Twilight, where we're going to collect 3 more bugs. And we're going to make our way up here, doing some mid jumps, woeing our way through. Look at that dog go. The bug, or the bug. The crux of the Death Mountain Trail segment is basically getting to the bug, defeating it in a way that keeps us on a straight line path, or keep us on the steam cycle that we're on. We want to be on a good early cycle. It's not the tightest thing in the world to be on, but it is, if you play sloppy, you will lose a cycle, and that does lose a solid 5 to 7 seconds. So that right there doesn't cost me the cycle, even though I was supposed to defeat that in 1 blow. But it will make the cycle a bit tighter here. So what we're going to do is there's 2 actually identical prescriptions to defeating this bug here. We're going to collect it and then jump on the ledge there. Yeah, just barely missing that cycle. The steam was going away, so we missed it by a decent bit. And this is the end of the Elden Twilight segment here. The next thing that we're going to do, so now we've spent the past 45 minutes talking about an all Fused Shadows run where I have not gotten any Fused Shadows or really done much in dungeons. I got the boomerang, that's about it. Trying to work with the map, which I don't have the ability to do. So now we're going to finally enter Goron Mines. This is the second half of the run. It's the Dungeon Gauntlet. We're going to enter Goron Mines, then after we enter Goron Mines, we're going to go and immediately beat Forest Temple, and after we beat Forest Temple, we are going to go to Lakebed Temple and beat Lakebed Temple, and that is the run. So we're entering what is a gauntlet and a lot of high-octane, fast-paced action. First, we have to do a difficult trick, though. So we have the Master Sword, and to get into Goron Mines, the state of the Elder Cave that Goron Mines entrance is at is in a weird state when you have the Master Sword but have not beaten Goron Mines. So we need to get in. One way to get in is to get the spinner. We're not going to do that because that would take us hours. So the other ways are via something called text displacement, where we break a text bit of one of a few NPCs, and Koro here happens to be one of them. He's going to sell us a lantern, oil in a bottle, and then I'm going to frame perfectly pull Uku Jr., and he will no longer be able to finish his text bit that basically says, hey, thanks for buying this. And because that's interrupted, we now have a preserved text bit state that is saying to one NPC of this specific type, which Koro shares with Gor Koron, the one who gates us from entering Goron Mines, hey, play the text bit associated with this number. That number is now persisted. That is the text displacement that I did. And now I can go up to the Goron Mines entrance, talk to Gor Koron. Gor Koron will play a text bit that will then open Goron Mines, and then we can enter. First, we need to ascend, though. And this is not Tears of the Kingdom. So I literally mean we need to climb. Like, go up. Not through it, unfortunately. Ooh, very close cycle there. Making it, though. Very nice. So when we climb up here, these Gorons are hostile to both human and wolf kind, apparently. So we're going to let them hit our totally real Hylian shield, and then smack them with the actually real Master Sword. That is going right on into that steam vent. Very nicely done. So we're going to have some Gorons rolling down here, and we can dodge them if we hug this wall and do some kind of specific but not super specific movement. We're going to do the same thing that we did before to this Goron with the shield and then stabbing. And we want to collect some rupees because while we did pay 100 rupees to Koro, almost close to falling down. While we did pay 100 rupees to Koro, we still want 120 rupees to give to Barnes for a bomb bag. Having 74 rupees, there's a very easily accessible 50 rupees in Goron Mines, so our rupee route is no concern, and we'll be getting that bomb bag immediately after Goron Mines. But that is the other thing that we're going to be doing with this. So this is Gor Koron. Gor Koron says, hey, and we're going to clip behind these Gorons, which is only doable after he says, hey. If we try to before he says, hey, there is not only the actual Gorons in the way, there is also an invisible wall obstructing us. So we're going to see our first instance of an LJA, long jump attack, or a second instance because Sword and Shield Skip was one. But with a boomerang, it's a lot easier. So how this works is if I target a spot the ledge is over Link or over a void and positioned higher than Link, then you can jump attack to it, and with a target lock, Link will try to go all the way to it as much as possible up to a cap, and give us a nice big jump, like over that gap. We'll see a few of those in the rest of the run. It is the pivotal tech for Twilight Princess. It is what we are most known for, is that boomerang long jump attack, boomerang LJA, or just mostly known as an LJA. Now that said, we do actually see at least one of every type of LJA in all Fused Shadows, as we do with any run that goes to Goron Mines and gets the boomerang. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but there are 3 different types of LJAs. There are enemy LJAs, which we did one with Sword and Shield Skip earlier. There is a boomerang LJA, which is by far the most prolific because it's basically usable anywhere you can find a surface that is either a void or above Link. So we're going to do a trick called slab clip here, where I'm going to roll parallel to the slab, and that will clip us right in. Very nicely done. And we'll see that third kind of LJA in just a little bit. It is in Goron Mines. So basically, we're going to navigate our way through Goron Mines, and just as quickly as possible, we're going to do a large variety of different things to get through it as quickly as possible. The boomerang will help us in a lot of ways and make some minor headaches not headaches at all, which is very, very nice. But there are other things better solved by simply abusing the tech that is at hand with just rolling or jumping, or in one specific case, holding up. And I'm not joking. You literally hold up with a good angle, and that is the trick. And we'll see that in just a little bit. First, we have to do what is everyone's favorite part. This is magnet ceiling walking. So, unfortunately, there is no glitch, at least on the GameCube version of the game, to skip over this in a good way. You can speed it up just a little bit by doing slash combos. But unfortunately, because you can clang the sword on the sidewall, you don't have the ability to just spam these. Now, I will move a lot faster. You can see the stab is lurching me forward. This is ever so slightly faster. I'm going to try one more, but yeah. There is one more that you can do here. It's a little bit tight after you get past this wall here with an angle, kind of like I did a little bit early. But the general idea was correct. You're able to get one more in. But unfortunately, you do just kind of walk across the magnet ceiling. There's not really much more that you can do. We're coming up to that room where you hold up in just a moment here, but first we have the room that has a couple of bonks, apparently, and my favorite cutscene. Not this cutscene. This is my favorite cutscene in the entire game. Might be my favorite cutscene in the Zelda franchise. So if we go up here, we're going to roll up this slope, and we're going to go on this switch and this cutscene right here. Look at that. Told us that the little magnet was on its way. That is my favorite cutscene in the entire game, because the actual length of the cutscene is shorter than if I were to skip that skippable cutscene, so we just watch it every time, because it's faster. That is literally it. I wish I were joking. That is the hold-up room. So I had a good angle, and so I shimmied a little bit because the angle wasn't exactly what I wanted, but you can literally, with a good angle, hold up and just clip right through that center of that gate. Gates are suggestions. We just walk right through them. All right, now not this room, but the room after this is another room that is trivialized by doing a boomerang LJA. So in this room, if we didn't have the boomerang, we would either need to do casual strats and go get the second key shard, or do a strat called key shard skip, which is seen in Goron Mines RTA, or we can target above the door and do an LJA with the boomerang and jump right on over and not do any difficult strat or any casual strats. Just jump right on over and we're into the Danguro room. Danguro is the midway boss of Goron Mines, and he is very broken and very fun. So we're going to do a setup here. I'm going to pull the sword and do 3 jump attacks. I'm going to backflip 3 times and equip the Iron Boots on the 3rd one. And then I'm going to let him tap me back 1, 2, 3 times, and then throw him. I grab the ledge as I throw him, which locks him under the ground there. Unfortunately, not getting the RNG to actually fall in, or not fall in, to actually slash Danguro and grab him immediately the 3rd time. But very, very quick fight, very fun fight to perform, and in my opinion, to watch as well. And that is all we need to get the bow. That's right, in this next room, the Mayor Bow of Orden is in a chest waiting for us. Getting a nice little hop there. And this chest has the Mayor Bow of Orden. And he is turned into a bow. And we're just going to clean up the end of Goron Mines here. So we skipped over the second key shard. How the dungeon is supposed to work is there are 3 key shards, though the game only actually checks for the 3rd one, which is behind this gate here. So we're going to go back here, grab the 3rd key shard, and then it'll say, yay, you collected all the key shards. And yeah, we totally did. Good job. We did it. Now, this is that 50 rupees that I was talking about earlier that is just kind of very accessible to us. There's right here in this chest. Bam, 50 bucks. Look at that. We're rich. You know what you can buy for 50 bucks? A lot of ice cream. A lot of ice cream. And I'm saying that because after I'm done recording this submission, I'm going to eat ice cream. I have ice cream in my freezer. And if you are watching this at this random time in this video, I would recommend you do the same. So we're going to get the 3rd kind of LJA here. The 3rd kind is an NPC LJA. So Danguro is no longer an enemy. He is now an NPC. And we can LJA right to him by targeting him and jumping at a distance that we can't actually talk to him from. We can get an NPC LJA. It's basically the only instance of one that I know of at all, actually. And so the end of Goron Mines here, if we had the claw shot, there would be a strat that we could do. And by strat, I mean there is a claw shotable target. And I started to go there and then realized I didn't have the claw shot. So we do have to do this semi-casually. Going to look around and realize that I can't actually do anything, not because I don't normally do this at this point. If I'm doing Goron Mines RTA, we do something a little bit different. And in All Fused Shadows, we can't really do the same, or we can do the same thing. I'm just a little bit frazzled still from not having the claw shot because I had fully expected to have the claw shot because I have the bow. Or not the bow, the boomerang. We're gonna do a jump attack in the wrong direction because it reverses direction, and I guess I forgot that there. So we just have to do that again. It's a little bit of a time loss. Ladders are very slow in this game. And so is waiting. We're going to have to wait for this to go down, wait, go back up, and then leave again. Still not really remembering how that worked, apparently. Looking in what I thought would be towards the door, but was not towards the door at all. This is going to be the last cool thing in Goron Mines. We're going to shoot the... Go a little bit to the right, that's the left. There you go. Shooting the rope from a distance so that we aren't being targeted by any of the Bulblins. So we can just go straight to the boss door. Now, Pyrus, or as he's called on German, Flamatron, is the boss of the Goron Mines. He is a very simple boss, as you would expect from someone named Flamatron. So, Flammy Whammy here is basically you shoot him in that giant red glowy spot, grab a chain, and put on the iron boots and walk away from him, trip him. And then we roll under his armpit and stab him in the face. We're going to do that 2 more times, and then it's GG. Not to the entire run, this is only our first fused shadow. Pulling the second time. Breaking the pots in the room because they have extra arrows and extra hearts. There's so much downtime in this fight specifically, that it's really just a time to go ahead and restock on your arrows, restock on your hearts, so that you are as safe as possible for what comes next. Which is just something that I'm used to for all dungeons. It is not really the most important thing for all fused shadows, because in all dungeons immediately after this is a bit of a gauntlet. In all fused shadows we are in the gauntlet, but not one where the bow is the most relevant. And that's the end of the Goron Mines. Very quick and easy. Saving Pyrus from the Twilight that was taking him over, returning him to his normal Goron self. And it coalesces into our first fused shadow, which is the second fused shadow, because that's not confusing. All right, and as I mentioned before, the next thing that we're going to do, we're basically going immediately to Forest Temple, but first we're going to grab a bomb bag. So the next bit of the run is literally just in Kakariko. So in Kakariko, we're going to go to Barnes Bombs. Barnes Bombs does not sell you bombs until you have beaten Goron Mines and done the King Bulblin 1 fight. For some reason, those both are required. Couldn't tell you. So now that those are both done, we can go buy bombs. Bombs are useful. Just going to head over to that shop, and we do have the rupees needed. I'm going to do something called an Epona slide here. Had a little bit too much momentum, but that was almost cool. Yeah, it was cool. It just wasn't correct. I'm going to buy that bomb bag for 120 rupees, and that includes the 220 rupees that we needed for the entire run. Putting on Uku Jr. and the boomerang, because that's what I'll need in the Forest Temple. We're going to go straight back to the Forest Temple. Now, I don't actually want regular bombs, so I'll be dropping bombs, but I have a while to drop the bombs. I'll explain that in more detail in a little bit, but for Lake Bed, I actually do want water bombs, which means that I want my bomb bag to be empty so that I can pick up water bombs. So in the Forest Temple here, we're going to go grab that boss key. We've already, of course, defeated Ook, who gave us the boomerang earlier. Going to jump over, skip around the movement in the room, not quite doing the correct thing for the puzzle. So go back. There we go. And that is how we get the big key in Forest Temple. Now we just need to make our way to the boss. We don't need any key doors, we don't need any monkeys, we don't need anything because we have a boomerang. We're going to get to see some more of those LJAs in just a moment. We're just going to roll through some rooms here. This would be yet another time for donations during a run, because I'm just dropping bombs. So we're going to throw the boomerang to turn this bridge here. Now we're going to actually do an LJA here. This LJA saves barely any time at all. It saves about half a second to climbing that ledge. And then we're going to, instead of getting all of the monkeys, we're going to, not quite, we're going to LJA onto this tree trunk here, do some parkour up the tree trunk, and we're going to LJA over, skipping the monkey rope vine, and going straight into the Diabob fight. Now I equipped the bomb arrows there. I'm not going to use the bomb arrows right away, but bomb arrows are very, very useful during the Diaboba fight, which is not something that you would guess because you don't have bombs or arrows normally. So during this first phase, we're just going to do it as is intended. Take the bomblings and put them in the twin Diaboba mouths, ending the first phase very quickly. And that brings out Diaboba. And so normally we would try to get the bombling onto Diaboba as quickly as possible, but we have bomb arrows and we just kind of shoot bomb arrow at Diaboba. And then when Diaboba's done rearing, we just do it again. So you can't actually attack Diaboba's eye from behind, so I was a little bit close, but fight done very, very, very quickly. And that concludes the first dungeon of the game, which gives us our second Fused Shadow, the first Fused Shadow of the game. Confusing. And then all we need is one more Fused Shadow, and that's the run. So we will make our way right over to Lakebed, get our claw shot, which we wished we had in Goron Mines, and then get the end of the run. And the final Fused Shadow and end of the run. So quickly exiting the Forest Temple. There's a few things that we're going to do. All we're doing is making our way to Lakebed, but this is going to put us in South Farron. So in South Farron, we are going to get on the horse. Call the horse first, of course. I did not mean to rhyme. I'll do it anytime. Climb the horse. Oh, sorry, the horse we climb. I meant to continue that rhyme. So we're going to ride Epona here over to the Lanayru Gate. And at the Lanayru Gate, what we're going to do is we're going to do a thing called Lanayru Gate Clip, because gates are suggestions. Gates are suggestions. Welcome to Twilight Princess. All gates are suggestions. If it is a gate, it is a suggestion. Some gates are more firm suggestions than others, such as the Stalord Gate. Well, yeah, this is just a bit of a mess, but we angle slightly to the right and then side hop. We can clip right through the middle as the gate is swinging. And then this cutscene actually isn't supposed to be skippable, but it is. All right, now we're going to do something called Pillar Clip. So Pillar Clip is one of the more famous tricks in Twilight Princess, where we are in a half-raised water state of the Lake Hylia here. We're going to dip down below the water and use nearly all of our air. We're going to aim towards this pillar that you see underneath Link here, and we're going to position him between the pillar and the wall. And then if we call Midna, that is a little bit early of a call, but the position looks just fine, which means we're going to sit here for a little bit. The swaying animation will make Link rise and then clip out of bounds, and then we can use almost the entirety of the rest of our air meter and get into Lakebed with just maybe a couple of seconds of air left. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to get that EBF that I was talking about before, because where before we didn't want to have the has skipped cutscene flag active, we want it active here. So we're going to go back into the Forest Temple on that second file from earlier, and we're going to do that forest back in time that we did, and we're also going to fail it the first time, like we did before. And so we will go for the second time. This is the same thing that we did before. We reloaded the King Moblin 1 fight to specifically then soft reset while skipping the cutscene. We're just doing that again, getting it the second try. And we're going to load that first file, which is our save after the Iron Boots save, so that we can load that and skip the cutscene, and now we have EBF again. This is going to be very useful in Lakebed. We'll see that in just a few minutes here. So now we really do want to get rid of these bombs. So I want to have an empty bomb bag by the time I get my claw shot, or really I can, if I have 3 or less, that is perfectly fine because I can continue to drop 3 more as I make my way to the water bomb chest that's in the room that I'm just leaving. We could also have the bombs dropped by that point, but it's the same difference. Going to do another boomerang LJA, jump right over that, skipping needing the bomb arrows, doing another LJA, skipping needing bomb arrows again, jump attacking right on up, very nicely done. That is how the room is done when you don't have bomb arrows. It's just how the room is done in general because it is fast. Now we're going to do the one of 2 double LJAs. We're going to stand in a specific spot on these stairs here, target somewhere on the chandelier about there, and then we're going to target there, do the first LJA onto the railing, and then jump from the railing to the ledge here. And we are almost immediately where we want to be for the claw shot, skipping the entirety of the turntables and water level changing and all of that we have in Lake Bed. Now we're going to do the second double LJA here, where instead of getting the water turning, we're just going to jump straight across like so. Now this is actually where you would normally exit Deku Toad. But because we have EVF, we can enter this door and we can see up and look straight up as you would if you entered from below to trigger the fight, and it just starts the fight for some reason. So there it is. And then this will place us in the actual fight arena. Bomb arrows are also useful on Deku Toad. You can just shoot a bomb arrow into its open mouth. And then, because we have the Master Sword, we actually can do a 1 cycle here. Shooting my last bomb arrow, opening that claw shot chest. Now we have to do one more thing, and that is defeat Morpheal. So the reason that we emptied those bombs is because, like I said before, we want water bombs. So why do we want water bombs? Well, we don't have the Zora armor, and the Morpheal fight is entirely underwater. So I'll explain in a bit more detail as we get into the Morpheal fight, but we're going to use the water bombs to prevent ourselves from drowning. I'll explain that as we're in the fight. And there's our Wasserbomben. For now, we're going to do Twilight Princess's only boss key skip. Every other boss door is a actual door trigger. There is no load zone behind the door. In Lakebed, there is a load zone behind the door. So we can actually skip that boss key entirely. We don't need it. We can just clip in. We're going to go onto the staircase in a semi-specific spot, aim in a specific spot on the chandelier, and we're going to slash from yet another specific spot, be clipped into the railing here, accidentally clip out, so we have to try again. It's a little bit tight on the position that you want to be on. It's right next to clipping back in. We're going here again. Okay, and then we're going to have a position like that is perfect. We're going to back hop 3 times. I just did it 4 times and voided. Third time's the charm. We're going to slash down. That is not good. Claw shot up 4th time's the something. All right. So, getting in goes like this. Step 1, aim right there. Step 2, clip into bridge railing. Step 3, back hop, charge spin attack, end up with a specific-ish position, back hop 3 times and hold upright, and then you are in. And now we are in the Morpheal fight. So we'll be underwater the entire time here. So luckily for us, the cutscene to start the fight will refill our air. We're going to literally just sink here while holding the iron boot, while having the iron boots on, and we will be basically out of air as we touch the cutscene trigger here, and then it will give us full air back. Skipping that cutscene. First phase, all we're going to do is we're going to claw shot the eye. This is basically like Morpha from Ocarina of Time. Spin attack, and then we're going to pull water bomb. And ideally, before the eye goes back into Morpheal, we would unequip the iron boots so that we would raise up and not be on the ground and be in a more advantageous position. We did not get that here. That is pretty bad RNG. That is not really in my control. But it's pretty rare for that to not be in my control like that. But these things happen. So how Morpheal works is if I have the water bomb out while I'm swimming with it and I drop it, the game assumes that I am on the ground or on the surface. And because I was in a swimming state, the game assumes that I was on the surface and for a single frame before it runs the check on should I have my air checked or not. So in that single frame, the game goes, oh yeah, you're not in water, so of course you have full air. So then I have full air, and it refills the air. Getting a nice attack off there. We're going to do basically the same thing, where we're going to pull that bomb, delay refilling the air as long as possible so that we can grab onto Morpheal again with the iron boots equipped. We're going to stab Morpheal's eye 4 times, and then we're going to unequip the iron boots by force unequipping it, and then immediately re-grab the eye and finish the fight. And that is the end of the run. Time is on saying yes to Midna, so it's not exactly over yet, but that is everything except for formalities. That is Twilight Princess All Fused Shadows. It's a very cool run, very fun to do. I enjoy it quite a bit. And yeah, there's not really that much more to say other than Twilight Princess is a cool game. Let's watch a fish drain a room that is under a lake, and that lake does have water in it. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense because the lake still has water in it. How does it? Doesn't make sense. Where did it drain to? There's not even a drain in this room. Couldn't tell you. But we do get the 3rd fused shadow. And at the end of the day, isn't that what truly matters? Maybe the true 3rd fused shadow was the friends we made along the way. No, probably not. That would be silly. Right. And that is the end of the run. All fused shadows in 1:27:35. I've already said my thank yous and all of that, so thank you again, and have a good one.